All right, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. I hope you are having a beautiful, wonderful day. Hope you are having a beautiful, wonderful day, everybody. I just want to welcome you out. Today, we are doing Give It to the People live, and we are back with a special edition because I have somebody that is a creator, somebody that I know you guys want to hear from. And I also want to say, if you were looking last week, I think I was just too anxious for this interview. So I kept putting it out last week. And telling everybody to watch last week, right? So the thing is that I realized I'm running up the street, making sure I get to this broadcast. And yeah, the broadcast was today. So I think that sometimes it's a good thing to be a little bit overzealous and to be excited about having an interview because once you actually get to it, then it makes it even better. So I have a wonderful guest that is joining me today. I'm going to pop him on the screen right now, Mr. Ken Branson.
Hey.
How are you today, Ken?
I'm well, friend. I hope you are.
I am well. I am. And I'm glad to have you on. And you know what? It's a lot of stuff that I don't know. So I think that this will give us a nice, quick little 30 minutes to be able to jump in and just find out a lot of information about you in general. And so I said, let me just let Ken introduce himself. And then I can jump into all of our questions and we can talk about all the great things that you do.
Hey, good deal. Of course, Ken Branson here from Basement to Balcony. MasterMIND Productions as well. I like to tell a quick story about Basement to Balcony. We'll get there, but it's literally an incomplete brand at the moment, right? So a lot of people are like, what in the world is this all this going on? But MasterMIND Productions is my baby. 15 years ago, I started that business out of the basement of my church doing video editing, video broadcasting, and it led to some sports action photography. Listen, I was just doing everything I can to pay my restitution and my child support so I can stay out of prison. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
So that's where it all started at back then. Video production turned into video storytelling. And I mean, I just give the people what they want.
Come on, we give it to the people over here. So for
Absolutely.
anybody if this is your first time, give it to the people. What we do here is we highlight BIPOC businesses. So that's Black, Indigenous, what's going on today? Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And I like to always make sure that we let people know about people that I find that are interesting, because I always think that it's more interesting to find out about the journey of how a person got to where they were at. A lot of times people want to go and they want to just get all the celebrities, and there's nothing wrong with that. Celebrities are great too because they have a story. But what about our people that are in our community that are doing some great things that you need to know about? Because more than likely, then that means you'll do business with them and we can keep our dollars in the community right here. So when you, let's go back, right? Because you said, okay, I had to pay child support, I had to pay restitution. Give them just a little bit about what that whole thing happened right there. And then let's fast forward.
Yeah, too easy. So back in maybe 2004, I had just got out of the Marine Corps. I was an electronics technician, so I was responsible for working on circuits and stuff like that for communication systems. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got a job servicing ATM machines, like 19, 20 years old, looking at about $250,000 several times a day. Became too, the temptation was too great. So obviously I started taking a pinch here and a pinch there. And it ended up being about $40,000. And of course, some prison time that came along with it. So my son, my firstborn, came somewhere around the mix as well, too. So with about $600 of restitution to pay and a little over $400 a month for child support, that was $1,000 that I had to pay just to stay out of prison. Right. So that's where it all started at.
Oh, wow. Okay. First of all, did not know about the Marine Corps. So see, that's what I'm saying. It's just so many layers. Now, listen, the temptation, I can understand it, because if you heard about that news story, I don't want to get into it, but the young lady in Long Island with making $40 million worth of counterfeit stuff, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother story, right? But, I was looking at the fact that my husband said yesterday, he was like, she is only supposed to get 1 to 3 years in jail. 40 million. I mean, so it's like, it's one of those things where I think that sometimes things are disproportionate when it comes to just, what happens with people. But I think that in that, and you learn in the lesson, is that you are a success story, because you could have done a whole lot of different things after that. But then you chose to say, okay, well, let me take these talents that I have, this skill that I've already learned, and then turn that into something that could also be lucrative for me. So once we get past, okay, look, we know what we have to do to survive. What did you do to get into a position to actually thrive in your business?
Oh, man, that's a good question. So I surrounded myself by individuals who was already in the direction that I wanted to be at. or be in. I like to tell the story all the time about one of my good colleagues and friends, Dare Kumolu Johnson. I was helping him one day unpack some bags and set up an exhibition at the Armory one day in Durham. And while I was unpacking bags and carrying bags, I like to put some emphasis on that because people don't believe in that type of stuff no more, right? But while I was unloading his stuff and carrying his bags and helping him, I seen him a business card he had, and he called himself a visual storyteller. So I literally, at that moment, I took that title. I still have yet to tell Dare this story, but I took that title and I applied it to my business and to my life. And I'm like, this dude is an amazing visual storyteller. And I feel like I'm a storyteller too. So I'm about to start telling myself I'm a storyteller, and I'm about to start telling others that I'm a storyteller. And next thing you know, it literally, grew some feet and ran. And that was the moment that I really started to see my business thrive. In addition to calling myself a storyteller, I started to tell my own story. Kelly Richmond Pope, Dr. Kelly Richmond Pope, she is a forensic accountant at DePaul University, I think. And I did some work for her at North Carolina A&T State University one time, and she was talking about Rita Crumwell, who embezzled like 50 some $50 million as a city comptroller. All the Queen's Horses is the documentary on Netflix. You can check it out. But I was filming Dr. Pope talking about this stuff. And afterwards, I told her my background, and she was like, "You gotta be kidding! You can't. You really." I really don't believe that you stole $40,000 from ATMs you're working on. So she advised me actually to not divulge my story, right? She told me it wouldn't be in your best interest because I was doing business with Google, AARP, Cisco, a lot of, household names. She was like, I think it could jeopardize your career and you're thriving in the moment. So I kind of went against the grain about 12, 18 months after that encounter with her. And I started to tell my own story. So in addition to calling myself a storyteller and telling my own story, that's the moment that I really seen my business take off and start to thrive.
Well, that's when when everybody says being authentic, and I always believe a couple of things. So this is probably what, like, in some capacity or another, when people say you should meet somebody, I would see that people would send you to me to you before we even really knew each other, right? And one of the things that I've always prided myself on is I always love people that do tell stories. So I always loved listening to Maya Angelou. I love, comedians that tell stories, right? Because I think what it does is it enthralls you. It gets you into a little world, a little universe, and then they'll give you a point of some substance at the end. And so to me, I think that that's interesting. So even when I'm teaching people, I'm still trying to tell them a story so they can relate it to their own lives, and then they can get something from it and they can see why it's important to do things. So I really love the aspect of that. And I'm glad you didn't follow that advice, because that then leads you to be able to not just tell your story, but also to tell other people's stories. And so in being able to do that, just me seeing it firsthand. So I'm gonna tell y'all, if y'all have not watched the video yet, you need to watch the video. Ken just did our wonderful promo video for Give It to the People, and being behind the scenes was actually, to me, better than being in front of the camera. Okay, now I love to be in front of the camera, but Ken was able to get my husband, who is an introvert, and I've been telling everybody this, but if you know him, he's an introvert, to just calm down, relax, and deliver lines in a way that was natural to him. And so there's something in being able to do that. It's kind of like the photographer who can help you pose when you're anxious, right? You have this way about you that I think makes people feel comfortable. And I want to ask this question because people will say all the time, "Oh my God, I don't want to do video. Oh, I'm so scared. I don't want to get in front of the camera." What do you feel like is your secret sauce, if you want to, divulge it, that makes people feel comfortable enough to be able to tell their story and be able to get it out in front of the world?
Yeah, I'm glad you framed it that way because I do feel like it's a two-way street, right? Who's ever behind the camera definitely has to make the person in front of the camera feel comfortable, and the subject has to be willing to talk as well. So the first part of that, the art of interviewing, I wish I can tell you a 5-step process or a book that I read in order to become a better interviewer. But I really do believe that it was my journey to mental health awareness, right, that really helped me to become a better interviewer. That journey started about 2015, where I had to ask myself hard questions. And in addition to asking myself those hard questions, I had to wait for the answer and literally start to apply whatever I just gained to my life and eventually to my business.
Mm.
So I just put a piece together, and it's probably on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. But I interviewed Shelly McFadder, who is the president of Bridgepoint General Contracting, 2 years ago during the pandemic. I did a job for Hub RTP. Shelly was one of the people that I interviewed in that thing. And literally I came to her and I said, tell me what it's like to be a woman in construction. She literally said, I hate that question. I'm tired of that question. Whatever she said, she was completely authentically herself. She's like, I'm tired of that question. Behind the scenes, I cut this part out. Behind the scenes, I was like, no, but you got to give it to me. And in hindsight, I was forcing her to be comfortable with something she wasn't comfortable with. Fast forward 2 years, now to 2020, I interviewed Shelly this month, and I literally asked her the same exact question, but I framed it a totally different way. I had a chance to interview so many of her employees, crew members, subcontractors, and they started to talk about a family culture, a family style culture at Bridgepoint. So I went to Shelly and I was like, listen, I'm hearing so much about family style culture here at Bridgepoint. Where did it come from? So literally, she was like, I started off as a senior project manager, or whatever her position was, and I kept coming to work late. So all these higher ups was like, what in the world is going on with Shelly? So Shelly, at the time, she was recently divorced. She had a set of twins and a younger child. So she had to get three, 3 and 4 year olds ready for school, preschool, and drop them off. And then she had to jet like 40-50 minutes to work. So she was late. So she realized that I'm going to have to tell these people what's really going on in my life, not to be an excuse, but to let them know, what time it was. So she started to go on and talk about the motherly aspect of the construction industry and the nurturing aspect of the construction industry that was missing, right? So she was able to, bring this type of this mentality to her company when she started it. And that's what a whole being a woman in construction is like. But it took me, a course of 2 years to make her feel comfortable enough, not just Shelly, but everybody, to make her feel comfortable as the interviewer. Now, on the flip side of that, the interviewer or the interviewee has to be willing to like come from the gut.
Yeah.
Right? Don't nobody like this surface level conversation. Hi, my name is Ken Branson of MasterMIND Productions. I'm a visual. Like, don't nobody care about that. Like, they really want to hear, the depth, the part that nobody really want to talk about. And I urge my clients to come from those pits so people can authentically connect with them. So that's two sides of the art of interviewing right there.
Okay. Now you just gave me my next question. And this is something that I think we both do. And I think we do it well. So there is this video that just came out with Deion Sanders. He's being interviewed and he cuts the dude off. I don't know if you've seen this, right? He cuts the dude off because he's like, I want you to talk how you just talked before we were on camera. And the guy's like, well, I'm saying the same thing to you. And he's like, no. He's like, your tone, the inflection that you're putting on is like, hi, hey, Deion, da-da-da. And he's like, but over there, he was like, well, look, I can't just get on the camera and be like, what up, bro, da-da-da, right? And Deion is telling him, okay, I'm not telling you that you have to do that, but I am saying for you to use your voice that you would normally use. And, the guy is like, well, I'm trying to be professional. And he's like, well, what about you? Do you feel is not professional, right? So I'm listening to this and I'm also knowing how I talk. And so, when I say I'll use colloquialisms, I'm going to use a little slang. I tell people I'm definitely going to be sarcastic. You're going to get all of that. But in my natural speaking, I write how I speak, right? And so it's not a lack of, intelligence. It's not a lack of proper speaking. It's just, I think sometimes if you're comfortable in what you're saying, you will just talk like you regularly talk. And I know that a lot of people, and I see this specifically, and I am going to say this with Black people who want to be in certain positions who feel like they can't talk like they talk. And so then they do the code switching, or they do the tone switching, which is the new thing right now, right? Of trying to make other people feel comfortable. And what I've found is that me just being regular me, and if I'm saying girl, or like one thing that I say from being from New York, I'm just going to say mother. Like mother is M-O-T-H-E-R, right? But I'm not going to pronounce it like that. Like, so it's going to be one of those things where your natural pronunciation just kind of comes out. You are who you are. And I think that, for me, people tend to either get with it or they don't, so have you found that anybody has had a problem trying to be themselves? Because when I'm listening to you, you are authentically you. You are definitely saying things in a way that is, just regular talk. You're not trying to put a whole lot of jargon into it. And you give me like what I feel like is making me feel comfortable. But do you have a lot of people that want to be so perfect that they don't understand that the way that they talk is really the essence of who they are and what they could really get across to people?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great point that you made. I have a lot of clients like that. And honestly, the bulk of my clients are women. So I deal with a lot of women who are, self-conscious in that way. I want to present this particular image. I can't be out here saying this, looking like this because of X, Y, and Z. And it all goes back to self-awareness, mental health awareness. Why do you feel like you got to why do you feel like you got to put on for this person, or for this position, or for the, for whatever it is? That's the issue that we really need to deal with at the moment. Maybe not in front of the camera, but in order for you to come off authentic, to attract the audience that you're looking for, you got to be real with yourself. And that leads me to another thing. There is a certain audience who is waiting for us to thrive. There is a certain audience who look a certain way, who talk a certain way. Like I got 13 felonies. Like, I'm not the corporate executive. Can I talk to corporate executives? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I have a life that I lived. I had kids out of wedlock. You understand what I'm saying? With a convicted felon, I don't have a formal degree. Like, I ain't got time to be trying to be somebody I'm not, because it's that target audience, that group right there is waiting for me to thrive so they can look and see what they can do so I can go do the same thing. Because if Ken did it, I know I can do it too. That is very important. It all goes back to that self-awareness key right there.
It does. And I think, so many people want to be so perfect that I think it keeps them from being as progressive and as proactive as they could be. So yes. One thing I can say, we're doing the video and Ken's like, okay, let's look at the video. Okay, you want me to change anything? And I'm like, no. I mean, I love what you put together, right? And so I think that a lot of times too, people have to know, when we're talking about this whole art of storytelling, what is the story that you want to be told? And to me, when I'm looking at it, what visually do you want people to see? So I'm just giving this to people so that this way they can understand what we've been able to accomplish together. I knew what I wanted in our studio. I knew how I wanted it to look, and I knew how I wanted it to feel. I got the photographer to take the pictures. So this way, by the time Ken came over, Ken was like, okay, well, we're going to shoot some stuff. And then I showed him the pictures and he was like, well, let's use the pictures, right? So it was one of those things where I think part of storytelling, especially if you're going to be a visual storyteller, is you have to visualize what you want and put that together, and then allow somebody who is a mastermind, like my little pun right there, right? I'm so corny, but who is a mastermind to pull that vision together for you so that this way it can be something that now everybody can enjoy. So what are some things or some tips that you could tell people to be able to pull that vision together so when they do their videos, they look like the person that is in front of you and you feel them and you understand what they're going through and why people want to invest in that person that is telling the story?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing I would do is I tell everybody it's really hard to connect with creative professionals if you don't know how how our brain work or how the business operate or whatever. So check the portfolio is the first thing you should do. Like, look at the work and see, do you like the color, the look, the feel, the style, and all that other good jazz. Does it resonate with you? Do you think it'll resonate with your audience? And once you are able to, once you like the portfolio, then the second thing I advise you to do is find out, like you said, I couldn't have said it better, is what is the end result? what is the story that you want to tell? And then you have to leave it in the hands of oh, hold on, I forgot a very critical piece, is the must-haves. Right after you select whoever you want to rock. I'm sorry, after you have the end product in mind, then you have to talk about some must-haves. Very famous thing very common thing that I like to say, especially to wedding clients, is when you press play on this video, what do you want to see? And oh my God, it gives them an opportunity to just dream out loud. I want to see my shoes here, and I want to see my dress, and I want to see walking down and so you got to be taking notes as the interviewer. You're taking notes because she's telling you exactly what she wants to see. And the same for any other video outside of wedding work as well. You got to write down those must-haves because they're looking for it at the end of, when the video is all said and done. So I think I just dropped about 3 nuggets right there. As to somebody who don't know how to work with a creative professional, those are 3 things that you can do to kind of bridge that gap.
Okay, so I'm just going to recap it. Check the portfolio. And I think that that's extremely important because even when people are doing stuff like working with somebody on Fiverr, I tell them you need to be able to look and see the previous work that they've done so that this way it makes sense for you. And even if you're looking at, and every creative, I'm going to throw this out there, every creative, for some reason, I notice, is not necessarily as creative on their own platform, I've noticed. Now, that's not you, because you will put out videos galore, and you make me feel like, she said, if you don't get out here and do some more videos, because Ken is killing the videos, right? But it's like I get encouraged when I keep seeing stuff out there. And I think you personally, just looking at the way that you do things, you have, to me, taken simple things and just made them pieces of content. And it's just like you did one video and you can see that the camera is like kind of close to the ground and you're walking in, bringing in equipment, and that's a piece of content. And it's like people are looking at the end, like you said, but there's all of the stuff that has to happen before you get to that ending point in order to make things, be what they need to be. So it's kind of encouraged me to say, well, let me use some more of this behind the scenes stuff in the content that I'm creating, because maybe people do want to see that. And I think that it can be important for people to just kind of realize that background stuff, I'm great at the background stuff, but sometimes I just didn't put it out, and I will hold on to some content forever. And then it's a year later and I put it out. But the thing that I say is, in just looking at the way that you do stuff is you're like, okay, I'm going to put this out. I'm going to have something that's constantly going out. And then I think what it does is it keeps people, paying attention, right? So check the portfolio. 2 was, what is the end result that you want to have? And 3 are, what are the must-haves, right? And so one thing, if I could add something to it, would be, what don't you want to see? Because that's one of the things is sometimes you don't like something that somebody else did. And so you don't want to emulate that, or you don't want that to come across. And I think, knowing what you don't want is also just as important as those must-haves.
100%. So, I totally agree.
Yeah. So if you had, what would be, just if you want to leave the people with like a big piece of advice about the art of storytelling? They're saying, well, look, Ken, I like what you said today, and I would love to be a client of yours. I just heard those 3 nuggets that you just dropped. But if I'm thinking about making the investment, what is it that makes me say, yes, Ken's the person for me to go with? I should definitely be over here doing my storytelling, and I need him to be able to help me with that. What are some of the pieces of advice that you could give to a person that's trying to make that decision?
Wow. Trying to make that decision, I think one of the biggest misconceptions of storytelling is, like, let's just say, I'll use myself for an example. Let's just say, somebody want to know how to, I want to use myself for an example. Let's just say a brick mason. Okay. Since I'm looking at some bricks outside, let's just say a brick mason comes to me and like, I want to tell my story. One of the first things they think about is, oh, I need to talk about how I make bricks. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool and all, but like, it's a million of y'all out here making bricks, bro. Like, yes, you can talk about the secret sauce of brick making, but at the end of the day, people really want to connect with you as an individual, right? So the biggest misconception is like, yes, your work is good, but what can you talk about from a personal aspect that will allow your audience to be like, you know what, I really rock with this person. Then once they rock with you as an individual, your products and service become a byproduct. So whether you go from, just making bricks to now making brick houses to brick buildings, like they still gonna rock with you because of you as an individual, no matter where you go. All right. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions right there. So a lot of my clients, when they start to work with me, they don't understand that content is really king, and like we really map this thing out how we're going to work together for the entire month. Okay,
Okay.
so if you don't have a month's worth of content, I can help you create a month's worth of content. But at the end of the day, like we really got to dig deeper than just the surface level of what you do every day and how you do it. I don't know, Chisa, like what other follow-up questions? Because I mean, I can go on for days as to help somebody make a decision on how to rock with us or another storyteller.
Yeah, no, I just think that that's important because sometimes, and this is just my personal opinion, everybody's not for you. Everybody's
Yeah.
not your client. And the person who can't see the value in spending time or money or doesn't understand that is the person that's just like, oh, well, just do this for me. I just need a video. And it's like, well, what do you need the video to say? Well, how do you want people to feel? And a lot of times I ask people, how do they want people to feel about their business? And they really can't explain that. And it's just like, do you want people to feel like you're a luxury brand? Do you want them to feel like you're fun? Do you want, so when you start to ask people those questions, I think that it gives them like time to reflect and say, well, a lot of times I didn't really even think about it, And so that's why I like people to just know, okay, look, the person that's coming to work with me is probably going to be this type of person. They're going to understand these types of things. And so I always think that that's important because sometimes people are just not ready for you yet. And they need to build themselves up. And I don't think it's necessarily a confidence thing. It could be that they just really don't know and they need to figure that out for themselves. Or maybe they need to just be in business longer. Maybe they haven't had that many, struggles to where they feel like they really need help. Because a lot of people are like, okay, well, I can do it myself. And I agree with that. Totally, completely. It's a lot of things you can do by yourself. But I think personally, just from working with you, you are a guide. So I think you guide them to get their minds right in order for them to be able to feel that they have something that they do want to share with people, and that brick mason, like you said, is just thinking about making bricks, but that's not really the important thing. You know what I'm saying? Like so many different ways to tell stories to pull that out. And so I love, being able to let you tell people why they should, come in and work with you. All right. So, well, what else do you want people to know? We got a couple minutes left. So if there's anything that you want to leave people with, then what are you thinking? How do you feel?
Yeah, good question. So right at the end there, you gave me another good gem to drop about the basement to the balcony, right? So yes, it is an incomplete brand, but it is how I built my business. I literally started my business in December 2007 in the basement of the church I was attending at the time. Also, I grew up in a house that had a basement, but my parents, like, they upfitted the basement to like turn into living quarters for my brother and I. So I grew up in the basement as well, right? So I took how I built my business. I took that same concept. And this is what I apply to my clients. I start telling stories from the basement. Literally, where did you get started? How did you get started? What inspires you to get started? Who are some of the people that inspired you, right? These are all tips that you can use to create stories, right? And then, like, let's talk about the next level. When did you make your first $10,000 or $5,000 or $1,000 in a day, in a month, in a year, whatever the case may be? Like, this is how we build content from the basement to the balcony. Like, midways there, like, when did you go full time? Were you scared? Did you have a job? Were you building your business on the side? Listen, that's a thorn in my flesh too. A lot of people out here talking about building businesses on the side while you're working a full-time job. Please comment below one of these videos and tell me if you are that person who built the business from the ground up and is now successful while you had a full-time job. I'm waiting to see how many people actually do that. But anyway,
that'd be me. That's exactly what I did.
You one of them. You probably like a half of 1% of people who really did the thing, right? But anyway, so I talk about the journey, like some of your milestones, and these are just a whole lot of things that I do, a whole lot of content that I built from the basement to the balcony. Obviously, none of us have arrived in business yet. Like, we always feel like there's a new level to go. But I like to tell my clients, let's go to the balcony, right? Because when you get to the balcony, you are above all the noise. And when you speak, your voice travels farther because ain't nobody up there. You understand what I'm saying? But anyway, that's thank you for that. That little gem that you allowed me to drop. And listen, I don't know. I'm everywhere on all the socials. I know we about to wrap it up. I'm on Instagram, Basement to Balcony, TikTok, Basement to Balcony. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. Just started a Facebook business page, Basement to Balcony, so I can do some ads and stuff like that. But anyway, the website, basementtobalcony.com. Listen, call me, email me, text me, whatever. I love interpersonal communication. Why? Because I got to find out where you at, right? So we can help you get to the balcony. So it's back to you, Chief. So thank you.
See, I told you. That's why I said, sometimes you got to pull it out of people. And I think, you just dropping those questions, that's some stuff that it seems basic to some people, but them being able to answer that is like, all of a sudden the floodgates open up. And so I appreciate you just being able to share that with us. And I think that, when people start to look at the art of storytelling, they will hopefully feel more comfortable being able to tell their own stories. So whether they hire me, whether they hire you or some other wonderful, creative content creator out there, or if they start doing it themselves, I think it really is feeling comfortable in your own skin. And just recapping what you said, it is telling your story, right? Because nobody else is going to have your story. And that's really where the importance, of what you do, how you do it, and who you do it for really come from. So Ken, thank you so much. Now you guys see why I was excited about this interview, because I feel like Ken was going to give you some of that confidence that maybe you were missing. And I don't know, I loved it. So you guys can always type in, if you're watching on the replay, go ahead and, send some comments and everything. We'll definitely be checking them out. The replay will be posted on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. And then we'll share the video on all the other social media platforms. So Ken, thank you so much for spending time with us today, giving us your journey from basement to balcony. And as always, at the end, everybody, I like to say, make sure you always show up and show out and continue to give it to the people. Bye, guys.